Hi, this is Harry Guinness, and in this tutorial for Computers.tuts Plus, I'm going to show you how to do simple image editing using the new image manipulation program, or GIMP. Photoshop's really the gold standard of this sort of thing, but even at the cheapest photographers only package, it's still around $100 a year. Other alternatives like Pixelmator come in at about 30 bucks. GIMP, on the other hand, is open source and entirely free. If you're only going to be editing a few images occasionally, it's the perfect way to do things. To get started, download and install GIMP on your Mac using the link below this screencast. Once you've done that, open up GIMP and you should see something that looks like this. First thing I need to do is bring an image in to actually edit. So to do that, I go to File, Open, and then I've got dolphin.jpg on my desktop, and just click Open down there to bring it into GIMP. This is a shot I took while I was sailing across the Bay of Biscay from France to Spain. There was a pod of dolphins that came and played alongside the boat. There's a few things I want to do to this image to improve it. The first is the crop. Unfortunately, even with the longest lens I had, the dolphin was still that bit far away. Second, the color. It's actually, I think, too saturated, which is unusual. Third, I want to brighten it up. And fourth, I'm contemplating converting it to black and white. So let's work our way through them in order. First, I'm going to crop. So I'm just going to grab the crop tool from the tools menu over here. It's the one that looks like an X-Acto knife. Click on that, and then you crop just by clicking in the image and dragging around. If you want to constrain your crop to the proportions of the image, hold down the Shift key while you drag. I think there is about the size I'm looking for. Then to move it into position, click into the center and drag it so that the dolphin is jumping, and we're giving the dolphin space to jump into. If you want to edit your crop, click in any one of the corners on these control handles or on the sides. When you're happy with your crop, just push return to accept it. You'll probably need to recenter things, so push the space bar to grab the move tool and just move the image back into the center of the screen. Next, I want to brighten it up. To do that, I'm going to click on Colors and then Brightness Contrast. This brings up the Brightness Contrast menu. I'm just going to drag that panel so we can see the image. Make sure the Preview checkbox is ticked. The Brightness Contrast dialog box is the simplest way to do things. GIMP has other more complicated tools such as levels and curves adjustments that give you a bit more control, but just for simply brightening up an image a little bit, Brightness Contrast is normally good enough. To increase the brightness, you just grab the control handle and increase the brightness slider. Give the preview time to render. If you're not seeing a preview, make sure the preview checkbox is clicked. That's probably a little bit too bright, so I'm just going to pull that back to maybe 11. Also the contrast. How does more contrast look? Looks awful. Pull it back. How does a little less? Okay, I think I'm actually going to reduce contrast because there's quite a bit of contrast in the images there is. So maybe -4. Good way to get a feel for what a tool or a slider does in GIMP is just to grab it and drag it all the way one way and then all the way the other. That way you can see what changes it's making to the image. I think that looks a little better, so I'm going to click OK. Next, I want to sort out the saturation levels, and then I'm going to convert it to black and white. I'm doing both because I want to have a color option and a black and white option because I'm not sure which I'll go with. I'm going to click Colors and then HueSaturation. This brings up the HueSaturation box. If you want to affect the overall hue or saturation of the image, make sure you've got master selected. If you want to just focus on a specific color, click on any one of the colors in the wheel there. I'm going to work on the image as a whole. Hue is the actual color, lightness is how bright or dark it is, and saturation is the intensity of the color. Unless you're trying to radically change the colors in an image, you're likely to ignore the hue slider and instead work with just the lightness and the saturation. Again, it's a good idea to make sure you get the preview checkbox marked so that you can see your changes as you make them. If I drag the saturation slider all the way to the left, it's going to go to black and white. If I drag it all the way to the right, it's going to get super saturated. I want to pull a little bit of saturation out just to start with. So we're going to look at somewhere like -19. I want to see what effect the lightness slider has. So I'm just going to crank that up. I don't really like how much contrast we're losing if I go up. How about down? I'm not sure it's doing anything that we really want. To see what changes I've made, I can just uncheck the preview checkbox and then look again. I'm happy with what that's doing to the sea. I think it looks a little better. I'm going to click OK to save that Looking at this image now, I think it could do with being a little bit brighter. So I'm going to go back to a brightness contrast adjustment. Once again, I'll grab the brightness slider, drag it up a little bit. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit this time, just to keep things in check. One of the things when you're editing an image is you will go back and forth between different dialog boxes and different things that you've already done, just trying to tweak it to get something you're happy with. Let's see what change that's made. Yeah, I think I'm happier with that. Click OK to accept that. I'm going to zoom in a bit more, so I'm going to grab the zoom tool. I can do it from the menu over here. It's the magnifying glass, or I can use the keyboard shortcut Z. Click into the image to zoom in closer. If you resize the image window, you can then zoom in a little more. Yeah, I'm happy with how the colors are beginning to look in this image. One of the things I want to do is sharpen it up before I save it out. To do that, I go to Filters, Enhance, and Sharpen. Drag the dialog box away so I can see the dolphin. To adjust what's in the preview, I can use the little sliders on the side to get the dolphin into the center. Once again, preview checkbox is checked. Drag it all the way up and we can see that's awful. So I'm just going to dial it back to maybe 30, which is again much too much, but we just want to see how it looks. Okay, I'm going to pull that back again, somewhere around 12. Uncheck the preview checkbox. Okay, I'm not sure what resolution you're viewing this at, but on my screen right now, I can see the sort of subtle sharpening that I'm looking for. If you're watching this in a lower res version, you won't see anything. Even if you're watching this on a high-res screen at max resolution, because of the resolution this is going to be saved out at, you might not see much, but trust me, around 12 is perfect. Once again, happy with the results, so I click OK. Now I want to save out a color version of this image. To do that, I'm going to go File and use the Save for Web dialog box. Like with Photoshop, the Export for Web box is often the best way just to save out a JPEG that's going to be lower resolution than an image you took with a DSLR. Even something like your smartphone will often be shooting images that are 3000 pixels across, which are too big just for throwing up on Facebook easily. With a photo, you always really want to be working with the JPEG file format. Ping 8 and Ping 24 work for things like logos where there's a lot of flat color. There's always a balance between the quality and the file size, so the default of a quality of about 85 is a reasonable balance. You're not losing too much detail in the image, but you're still getting a file size that's relatively small. To change the size of the image, click into that little tab there, and you can adjust the width and height. I'm going to adjust the width to 1000 pixels, and because they're linked, once I push return, the height will adjust automatically. You can see that's reduced our file size almost by half. Once I'm happy with the changes I'm making here, click on Save, select where you want it. So I'm going to go with Desktop again, and I'm going to name this Dolphin Color. I'm in Ireland, so I use a U in color. Push return to accept that, and we've now, if we look at the desktop, got Dolphin Color saved out. Next, I'm going to convert this image to black and white just to see what that will look like. There's a few different ways to do that. I'm going to do it using the Desaturate menu. Go Colors, and then click on Desaturate. With the Desaturate dialog box, you get to choose whether you want it to be based on lightness, luminosity, or average. There's some fairly complicated maths that underlies all of this, and it's all based on the histogram you can see there. The simplest thing to do is just click around within them and see which one you think works best. For this image, I'm feeling lightness. Push return to accept that. With a black and white image, one of the things you can do is you can push the contrast a bit more than you can with a color image. I'm going to add contrast using a different tool that's slightly more advanced. I could do it once again with the BrightnessContrast dialog, but I'm going to use a curves adjustment. Click on Curves in the Colors menu. Drag this out of the way so we can see the dolphin. What you see here is the histogram, which represents all the levels of light in the image. The more points down to the left, the darker the image, the more up to the right, the brighter the image. If you want to brighten an image using curves, you just click on the center point there and drag it up. You can see in the preview that it brightens. If you want to darken it, you do the opposite. You drag it down. If you want to brighten the highlights and darken the shadows, which is what contrast is, you create one control handle up the top and you create a second one down the bottom and create a little S curve. That's much too much, so I'm just going to dial it back. I think I want the brightness of the highlights to be increased slightly more than I want the shadows darkened. So somewhere around that. I'm going to uncheck the preview and then check it again. Yes, I think that's what I'm looking for in this black and white conversion. Once again, I'm going to save this out using the Save for Web dialog box. File, Save for Web, JPEG 85. Click into the next tab, and once again 1000, push return, click save, and then we're going to call this, I'm going to select desktop, and then I'm going to call this Dolphin BW. Click save. On the desktop we have the three images. We've got the starting one, Dolphin, the color version, Dolphin color, and the black and white version, Dolphin black and white. I'm just going to open these up in preview so we can get an idea of how the image has changed over the course of the tutorial. I've got Dolphin color selected, so I'm going to jump down to Dolphin. With this, it's oversaturated. You can't really see any detail in the Dolphin, and the Dolphin is too far into the background. With Dolphin color then, we fixed some of those changes. It's a good bit brighter. You can see the details in the Dolphin. I'm happier with the blue of the sea. It's not as ridiculously oversaturated. And then with Dolphin black and white, we've simply converted the black and white, added a bit more contrast, and I think that's the strongest of the images. In this tutorial, I've just given you a quick rundown of how to edit an image using GIMP. I've shown you how to crop images, increase their brightness and contrast, convert them to black and white, open them in GIMP, and save them out again. While I've focused on a holiday snap of a dolphin, this will work with any image taken with any camera. I've only touched on GIMP's great features. It's a really good image editor, and if you're only doing the occasional bit of image editing, and there's no need for you to shell out on an expensive program, download GIMP and get started with it. Thanks for watching this screencast.